right. Thank you for inviting me back here. It has been such an interesting week for me. After I spoke to you guys last Sabbath, I actually had a chance to speak to 130 Korean Seventh-day Adventist pastors gathered in Dallas, Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night. It was an exciting and special opportunity for me. I cannot say the same thing for the pastors, but I've never watched me speaking, presentation, myself speaking, and so it was and I got to watch it for the first time on video. One of the pastors from Loma Linda, California, he was in charge of the recording videos and putting on the internet. He put my video on the Facebook. So it was about like 30 minutes before I was about to start my presentation for the fourth night. I was sitting there, people are gathering together and we're putting things together. There's my phone beeping with a new message. I looked at it, it's me on Facebook for the first time. And I watched myself and I was horrified. I used to think, I look down maybe 50%, look up 50%. I'm not making this up. I was looking down about 99.5% times. And here I was about to give them my fourth presentation, and which happened to be also the longest. And I got up and I bowed to them and I said, I'm truly sorry what I've done to you guys for the last 3 nights, And I promised I'm going to speak better in the future, but not tonight because I didn't get to practice, Anyway, things went really well, and some of the pastors invited me. They came from all over the United States and Canada, and they invited me to come to their church. Today's topic is prayer, fasting, and mind of Christ. And I actually added a little bit of topic on overcoming sin and overcoming addiction. Let's pray first. Dear God, thank you so much for giving us your words and giving us Jesus and touching our hearts, inspiring our minds to look for Jesus and follow Jesus and to become like Jesus. Today I pray, I claim your promise that your Spirit will be with us. Please touch our hearts and mold after your image. Make us like Jesus. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, frontal lobe. The word frontal lobe has a special meaning among Seventh-day Adventist vocabulary. In fact, I believe the frontal lobe is the second most popular word in Seventh-day Adventist vocabulary after haystack, which is the number one most popular SDA word, right? So what does frontal lobe does? Well, think of frontal lobe as think of U.S. Navy carrier ship, and the frontal lobe is where the captain sits, and then he commands what the ship should do. Frontal lobe is where we make decisions for our future, and it is where we decide to do what is good or bad. And also frontal lobe controls our emotions, help us to do what is socially acceptable guidelines. A good example of frontal lobe function is a Stanford University marshmallow study. Have you guys heard of this study? So the child is given an option. You can get a marshmallow now, but if you wait 5 minutes, you get 2. So the child who we believe has a stronger frontal lobe function will wait 5 minutes and get 2. One who doesn't have not as strong frontal lobe, they'll immediately go for immediate satisfaction. What we know from other studies is that in life, success is not all about having high IQ or high GPA or high SAT score, but having capacity to wait patiently and keep working at something for greater reward. Isn't that true? So that's where the frontal lobe comes from. So this is a Dr. Pascual from University of Barcelona. he and his colleagues looked at all the studies that was ever done about morality. You know, like in science, they don't like to use words like fasting because it's too much religious. You know, they don't like to use words that has that religious connotation. So they use words like calorie restriction. We talked about that. And same thing with the brain scan studies like this. They do not like to use words about, sin, righteousness, such as. They like to use words like morality. And when they did that, they found out the frontal lobe area is where all these studies, brain scan studies, have done to point out to be the where you make a decision to do good or bad. Some of these slides might have some crayon letters there. It's because they're copied from this week's presentation. But, from the spirit of prophecy, from the Bible, we believe that higher nature, where we make the decision for the good or bad for the long term, happens in the frontal lobe. And it is working. And your lower nature exists in the limbic system. Limbic system is the area where you make a decision, such as, am I going to fight this or am I going to run away? Am I going to eat this or is this going to eat me? Or is that person can be my boyfriend or girlfriend? Those are the three questions this limbic system asks. Also, limbic system is where you make an emotional response to a situation. So let's say we only use our limbic system to make a decision who is going to throw out the trash after church potluck. We will be end up doing this. Praise God for frontal lobe, right? Now, limbic system is not all bad. Imagine you don't have a limbic system, so you don't feel any hunger, you don't have any desire for food. You will probably die in 40 days. And then let's say you don't have any limbic system to have a fear to run away, and you always fight, despite the person is about 10 times or 5 times bigger than you are. It's not a good thing to do, right? Right? And then let's say we don't have any kind of desire to have a partner. Our human race will finish in one generation. So this is why the limbic system is necessary in a way for our survival. It is about the balance, not just having a limbic system or frontal lobe. It's a balance between the frontal lobe and a limbic system makes your mind balanced. You want a frontal lobe controlling your limbic system, not the limbic system controlling your frontal lobe. Now, when there's damage in our frontal lobe, or connection between frontal lobe and the limbic system is detached or weakened, we have what they call frontal lobe syndrome. When you have a frontal lobe syndrome, symptoms include being quickly angered, easily depressed, difficult to understand other people's view, and you have no inhibition of touching a stranger's body and cannot stop eating. And it was around 1970, scientific world learned about frontal lobe. And the Seventh-day Adventist Christians became very excited because they knew about the frontal lobe. I'm going to read from one of the books that was written probably 1870s, 1880s. I don't know the exact year, but that's how I'm presuming. It's supposed to be one of the earliest writings. I was shown Satan as he once was, a happy, exalted angel. Then I was shown him as he now is. He still bears a kingly form. His features are still noble, for he is an angel falling. But the expression of his countenance is full of anxiety, care, unhappiness, malice, hate, mischief, deceit, and every evil. This is a critical part. That brow which was once so noble, I particularly noticed. His forehead commenced from his eyes to recede. I saw that he has so long bent himself to evil that every good quality was debased and every evil trait was developed. This is from Early Writings, page 152. This book exactly describes what modern science has found about frontal lobe syndrome. Now, the more I read about frontal lobe syndrome and frontal lobe importance, I have two children. I have a 6-year-old daughter and 3-year-old boy, and I sometimes wish that they'll never become teenagers. Why do teenagers act the way they do? I mean, some of the teenagers that I meet at different churches, they're much bigger than I am. Some play football, etc., and they're fully grown. But yet, they do not quite think like adults do. What makes them so different? The frontal lobe of brain is the last part of the brain that matures. So what happens is that you get older and older until you're about 20, all the other parts of brain develop, but the frontal lobe is the last thing to catch up to. So it kind of explains why sometimes the teenagers make decisions perhaps that's not best for them. And imagine, they do not have an official frontal lobe syndrome, but they have a fully grown limbic system. When they're hungry, do you have teenagers in your house? When they're hungry, right? They'll let you know they're hungry, right? So they have a fully grown limbic system, yet their frontal lobe is not quite there to suppress their emotions or basic desires. So it can often be that limbic system is controlling their frontal lobe. Someone told me this, that teenager's brain is like a sports car with powerful engine but no steering wheel. And we're not talking about self-driving car here, right? And I think this is so important. When I was growing up, my mom encouraged me to read this book, Message to Young People, page 256. The powers of the youth are mostly dormant because they do not make the fear of God the beginning of youth. The Lord gave Daniel wisdom and knowledge because he would not be influenced by any power that would interfere with his religious principles. The reason why we have so few men of mind, of stability and solid work is that they think to find greatness while disconnecting from heaven. Another thing that I like from the Bible is Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6. Train up a child in a way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. There's nothing like video games shows the importance of frontal lobe. There are many different studies that I could put on, but I'm just going to show you one that was done recently that was very interesting. Dr. Vincent Matthews from Indiana University School of Medicine looked at what violent video games do to teenagers' brain. So they put a bunch of teenager boys, and they divided the teenagers into two different groups. One to play Medal of Honor, which is like a violent shooting game. The other half to play Need for Speed Underground. So they're both video games, but one of them was like shooting and killing people. The other was just like, riding a car. No violence. I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of violence. I didn't play them. So after these teenagers played these video games for 30 minutes, they compared what the brain scan looked like. And after 30 minutes of the violent video games, the frontal lobes were much more suppressed among the teenagers who were playing the shooting games compared to the teenagers who were playing racing games. So even though it's not a real violence, the imitated violence were somehow suppressing the frontal lobe among the teenagers. What is even more shocking was they took it to the next level. After playing 30 minutes of this violent video games and then just 30 minutes of racing games, they gave like a pictures. Like here, I don't know if you've seen this picture recently. I don't think they used the identical picture, but like very sad situation, like from the war zone, maybe orphanage, someone who's injured. And then they asked these teenagers to respond. What do you think about these pictures? Those ones who played violent video games, they'll respond with very less emotion. And at the same time, their brain scan showed less activation in the area that you're supposed to have empathy. So you're not feeling sorry for this sad situation. The loss of the frontal lobe function is related to many different types of addictions. Alcohol, tobacco, drug, gambling, junk food, obesity, internet pornography, sex, shopping, work, you name it. They're all related with a loss of frontal lobe function. Seventh-day Adventist Church, we emphasize health and healthy lifestyle. And ultimate goal is not just to live, we talked about last time, 10 more years. It is that we live more and healthy life here and for the life for eternity. One of the favorite books of mine, Education, page 209, physical inaction lessens not only mental but moral power. Brain nerves that connect with the whole system are the medium through which heaven communicates with man and affects the innermost life. God speaks to us through our brain, And when we allow our teenager students to be exposed to the things that suppress their frontal lobe, they become less and less responsive to the heavenly influence that God is trying to give to them. And I know we have some young church members here, and I'm giving this presentation in front of probably more than 100 teenagers, and they really didn't like me afterward because I was out. But I'm here to tell you what the truth is. I honestly believe that having these violent video games in your house will shrink your teenager's frontal lobe. This is from another statement. Thousands of years, Satan has been experimenting upon the properties of human mind, and he has learned to know it well. And I'm just going to go down to the end of the paragraph that says, the great deceiver hopes so to confuse the minds of men and women that none but his voice will be heard. We talked about fasting, how important fasting is for your brain health, right? Today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about prayers. After all, Jesus recommended us two things to overcome our struggles, prayer and fasting. This is from NBC News, December 24th, 2014. Since early 2000, brain scan studies have shown that prayers activate and reshape our brains. This was Dr. Andrew Newberg from University of Pennsylvania, and then I think Jefferson Thomas Medical School, also in Philadelphia, has shown that when you pray intensely, your frontal lobe area becomes enlarged and becomes stronger. This study was done by Harvard Medical School Dr. Lazar. He or she looked at Caucasian Americans who practice meditation about 40 minutes a day. And they can actually measure the thickness of your frontal lobe due to daily prayer exercises. Dr. Lazar suggests that if you pray regularly, frontal lobe size become enlarged like bodybuilder lifting weights. That we've known this as a Seventh-day Adventist for many years. No matter who you are, the Lord has blessed you with intellectual faculties capable of vast improvement. Cultivate your talents with a persevering earnestness. Train and discipline the mind by study, by observation, by reflection. You cannot meet the mind of God unless you put to use every power. The mental faculties will strengthen and develop if you go to work in fear of God, in humility, and with earnest prayer. A resolute purpose will accomplish wonders. The statement links the prayer with the mental strength. Another study from the Yale University, Dr. Brewer, prayers do more than just making our frontal lobes bigger and stronger, but it also connects your frontal lobe and limbic system with a thicker, or I guess a stronger connection. Dr. Brewer suggests the stronger connection between frontal lobe and limbic system are associated, you become less mind-wandering and less daydreaming. Do you guys ever have a difficulty concentrating the task in front of you? I do. Yeah. So we realize that when we pray, the frontal lobe becomes bigger and stronger, and the connection between the frontal lobe and the limbic system becomes stronger. Therefore, instead of me acting on my anger, jealousy, compulsiveness, even addictions, the prayers help to overcome these temptations. Probably many of you guys heard this statement. The greatest victories to the Church of Christ or to the individual Christians are not those that are gained by talent or education, by wealth or favor of men. They are those victories that are gained in the audience chamber with God, when earnest, agonizing faith lays hold upon the mighty arm of power. You know, the NPR recently covered all the studies that's been done on prayer and brain. They made this statement: prayer may reshape your brain and your reality. I mean, that's not what we find as a Christian when we pray. Sometimes you feel like you're about to go through a storm, or you're about to drive this endless uphill, but you pray and you pray and you pray. Something in you that gives you strength to overcome, or the situation changes that you can overcome. That earnest, agonizing prayer. Mind of Christ. This is my favorite book, Desire of Ages, page 330, and this is the favorite chapter, the favorite section. In the heart of Christ, where reigned perfect harmony with God, there was a perfect peace. He was never elated by applause or dejected by censure or disappointment. Amid the greatest opposition and most cruel treatment, he was still of good courage. And I think that's what we need. If you have difficulties, and we're going to talk about addiction now from this on. When we are dealing with the addiction, when we are dealing with perhaps sin in our lives, in order to overcome sin, this is a mindset that we have to have. That, we cannot set our expectation with our limbic system. Do you guys remember the story from Mark 9 and Luke 9? So these boy with a seizure, epileptic. Olden days, actually, not in the Bible, but even non-Bible literature suggests that they thought if you're having a seizure, you're demon-possessed. So what they'll do is that they'll take the patient and they chain them in a wall, and then put them in a dark corner, and they go into like a fasting state, and they produce ketones, and those ketones will stop their seizure-like activities. Anyway, Mark 9 and Luke 9, before this, Jesus takes 3 of his disciples, Peter, John, and James. He goes to Mount Olive, and he has a transfiguration. And the other 9 disciples are left at the bottom of the mountain. And they're very jealous, because, this whole time, as they're getting closer and closer to the going into the Jerusalem, they're all arguing, like, who's the greatest and who's the best person. And then there comes this Jewish leader with his son, who's keep jumping into fire. Whenever I think about that, I think about during my psychiatric rotation, these teenager girls, they'll cut themselves. They just cannot stop doing that because they've gone through so much trauma from a little child to how old they are now. They'll keep hurting themselves, almost like they want to end their lives. And by doing so, they're getting pleasure. And I find this boy doing that. Like, he's jumping into the fire. I don't know what damage has been done, but he's keep doing that. So here this comes a boy who really, really needs help. And here's this his other disciples who are just all dealing with their what they call frontal lobe problem. You know, they're so thinking about me, instead of thinking of helping this boy. They cannot heal that boy, right? Well, am I the greatest? Am I going to be sitting on a second chair next to Jesus? So I find there are three types of patients in Luke 9 and Mark 9. First type was the child who was suffering from seizure and demon possession. Second type is the father who's a religious leader, who's a teacher, who thought, I have faith, right? And I can do whatever I think I can do. Kind of a delusion, I must say. And then what he did was when Jesus came down, he said, well, your disciples weren't able to heal me. And Jesus said, if you have faith, I can heal him, right? He said, he bowed down. He said, I have faith. Then I realized he really doesn't have faith. In meeting Jesus, he recognized that he doesn't have faith. And then he asked for faith. And then the third type, probably the worst of the patients, are his own disciples. You know, they're so obsessed, and their limbic system is so large, and their frontal lobe is so small now. They're only thinking about, like those gorillas, you know, kind of fighting. You know, who's the greatest? And then comes to Jesus, the great physician. He heals the demon possession, the epileptic boy. And Jesus puts the faith in that father who was too proud to have faith. And then third, Jesus then prescribes treatment for disciples' frontal lobe syndrome. This kind can come out only by prayer and fasting. You know, even Christians underestimate the value of prayer and fasting. You know, I'm going to take next half of the presentation talking about the willpower and overcoming addiction. So what happens? You realize that you have a strong limbic system and you have a weak frontal lobe. And then you do prayer and fasting, yet you still stumble. I find this type of situation in myself with my own temptations, and I find it a lot in the patients who are struggling with addictions. I used to work as a hospitalist, so I used to work inside of the hospital. And the physician's lounge, you walk in there with your doctor's ID, and then you open up. There's like a wall, just complete, full of refrigerators. There's like a soft drinks, you know, chips, and then the worst of all is a bluebell ice cream. I mean, when I walk in there, I'm not making this up, but I used to hear my voice, I mean, my name called out by the bluebell ice cream. You know, everybody has their own temptation and difficulties, right? And you know, I think that honestly, the bluebell ice cream, you don't find those in California. I used to train in Southern California until 2008. Because I think it's treated as almost like a drug instead of California. It's so addictive, right? I'm just saying this. It's very good, but I haven't had it for a long time. So, you know, whether it's overeating, drug use, and other addictions, what happens is that they're all targeting one thing, our brain's pleasure center. Do you guys remember, like last week, we talked a little bit about why the cheese is highly addictive? Did we talk about that here? All right, no. You know, I'm so sorry. Even, you know, like last week, you know, with the last total 6 presentation, my mind is just all over the place now. I'm getting confused with it. Oh, I'll tell you this. So, you know, have you guys heard that cheese is one of the most addictive substances that you can eat? No? What was that? Yeah. You know why this is the case, sir? Because there's a little bit of heroin in milk. You know, if you have a smartphone, then you can look that up. It's called the casomorphin, C-A-S-O-morphin. So, I'll explain this now. So you can actually get high on cheese. You know, like a lot of my patients, you know, I give them a presentation on how bad, you know, eating meat and cheese, etc., they come back and they say, I could stop eating beef and chicken because I don't want my cholesterol go up and have a heart attack. But they said, I cannot quit eating cheese. I don't know, you guys have experienced that. Cheese is very addictive. Do you know why that's the case? Yeah, it says on the internet, man, can you read what it says? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, cheese is most addictive because in 1985, we found out there's a trace of casomorphin, and the scientists, they concentrated it and gave to the laboratory mice, and the laboratory mice act like they're heroin addicts. They're going after it. I mean, their response is identical. But, so when you're drinking milk, it's this much and this much of maybe, I don't know, I'm just making up, maybe there's 3 drops of heroin. But when you're eating milk, it's a concentrated form of milk, right? Cheese. So cheese has a lot more of heroin in it. That's why. Now, you think about this. Why would God put heroin-like substance in milk? Isn't that cruel, right? Let me ask you this question. Which animal drinks milk after they're weaned up? Well, humans do. Right? So, that's why I think, first of all, it's unnatural to drink milk. That's number 1. Number 2, I believe that God put little trace of casomorphin, heroin-like substance in the milk. So when a baby is given, what was it?
I say that's what it's saying. It says to ensure offspring will bond very strongly with their mothers.
Yes, ma'am.
And get all the nutrients they need to grow.
Yes, exactly. That's what God did for us. See, that way the baby, when they drink milk, they create this bonding. I mean, I don't want to say the moms are drug dealers, but it's kind of that building. The baby becomes so bonded to the mother with a trace of morphine. They keep going back to the mother for milk, so that baby thrives and grows. Right? Well, that's good for babies, but not when you're dealing with the diabetes and the heart attack. You're not never meant to have that kind of relationship with cheese that we have with our moms. It's unnatural. And that's why Seventh-day Adventist teachings is to stay away from milk. I mean, milk and cheese and dairy products. Because it has high cholesterol, high fat, and it modifies your behavior. And also when you look at like a pizza, when you put cheese and stuff, it's not just cheese. You eat a lot of other stuff that with it. But you put a little bit of vegetable because you feel guilty. But most of it, it's a compensation. Most of it is not the healthiest thing to do, right? So when you eat that little bit of casomorphin from milk, it activates the area in your brain called pleasure center. The same thing happens. Marriage relationship, you experience dopamine release. You experience dopamine release with the heroin use, little bit of mommy's milk, and in marriage relationship. See, God has created this type of relationship to work in our brain that will last forever. Between mom and baby, husband and wife. Now, Satan and the world is trying to damage that relationship by giving you food that's not healthy, relationship that's not good, etc. Right? Now, overeating, drug use, addictions, the pleasure centers are damaged. And as a result, the first cheese you eat was awesome. I still remember coming to America, I had a cheddar cheese. I never had this before. We went to, in Chicago, Devon Street, there was a Aldi. It's like ALDI store. I don't know if you guys know. Yeah. I don't know if they have it here. Yeah. And I still remember the first time, because you know what? That it was so powerful experience for me. I remember going there, coming out, going home, getting a cheddar cheese, and then putting it in the microwave, and dipping that chips with the cheese and putting it in my mouth. It was an unforgettable experience. This is 27 years later. I can still taste it. It's how powerful dopamine is, right?
Did you like it?
Yeah, I mean, for nonstop. You know, and you know, and then when you eat that, you cannot stop. The first time you eat it, you get like this pleasure. Second time, little less, so you eat twice. Right? Third time, little less pleasure, right? So you have to eat little more, right? And that's typically what happens with obesity, addictions with drugs, with everything. And after a while, what happens is that, these type of behaviors not only damage your brain, but it damage your entire body. One of the worst things to do is a methamphetamine. I mean, that is just so addictive. You don't need, I used to work in a LA County Hospital and University of Southern California, Huntington Memorial Hospital. It's kind of joint program during my training. And you can actually see these patients in the ER. Like, I remember seeing you like 6 months ago, or did I see you? Like, yeah, I remember you. And in 6 months, the guy who's been doing methamphetamine looks completely different. And he'll come back. I mean, I don't have that many situations, but like you've seen this person before, and he comes back a few months later, and then he's not the same human being. The way they speak, the way they act, the way they think. The brain completely destroyed their face, looks. The drug destroyed their brain, looks, and their thinking capacity. They're completely possessed by their addiction. They completely lost their self-control. But there's a good news. Let's say this is the brain of a healthy person, and this is a pleasure center. And this is 1 month after this person decided to stop using methamphetamine. And then this is a 14-month after. You see how sorry about that. Is there any other microphone there active right now? I'm sorry about that. So you kind of see how this pleasure center is reactivated, right? And almost back to normal. When I started reading about addiction a lot last year or so, I kind of see these pictures as like what Christians call the justification and sanctification. What I mean by justification is that, when a person says, I cannot help myself. Have you ever been to AA meetings, Alcoholics Anonymous? I've been there. I wasn't a drink person. All right. But, okay, I confess. When I was about 5 years old, I had my first drink. And that was the last time I drank. I visited my grandfather's farm, and they drink rice wine. And my grandparents were Christians. And so the rice wine, the way they make it in the country area, it looks just like yogurt/milk. And it smells like yogurt. It kind of fermented, right? And I drank a shot, I passed out. That was the last time. I learned my lesson. So since then, I've been clean, to tell you that. So I went to AA meeting because when I was in medical school, they said, as a part of the course you have to attend. So I went to AA meeting. So they do these 12 steps, and everybody says, I'm so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic. First thing you have to do, you have to admit you have the problem, right? And that's what kind of Christianity is, right? First thing is you realize that things you've done, things that I've done, I cause harm to myself, harm to my family, people around me, and even to church, and also shame to God. You feel guilty. You say, God, I've done wrong. Please forgive me. That happens at this point. Like the methamphetamine user says, I harm myself, my family, I need help, I've done wrong. And that's the first step. And as this person stops using methamphetamine, his behavior changes. His personality changes. His craving, his desires, his thought process changes gradually back to normal. And I kind of think that's what sanctification is. Justification is a one-point event. To believe that Jesus has died for me and I accept his love for me. Sanctification is a gradual changes that I make because the love that he has for me. And your mind changes and become more and more like mind of Christ. See, like when I read more and more about addiction, I fall more and more into the writings of Ellen G. White. She's one of the authors that Seventh-day Adventists are very familiar with. And there's a book called Steps to Christ. And there's a Steps to Christ page of 46 and 47 and 48. The writings in those pages, again, Steps to Christ, page 47 and 48, is identical what National Institute of Health Addiction Program recommends. How you can overcome addiction. Let me talk about that later. But, the thing about addiction is that how many people have ever tried this? Like, you're addicted to something, it doesn't have to be methamphetamine, but let's say cheese. And then you say, put a headband, I should never eat cheese again, and try to fight. I don't know if you've done it. I've done it before. And then you do pretty well for about 3 days. And then there's like, church potluck and everything breaks, But, things like that. But that's kind of addiction is. You try to do it, you try to overcome with your own self-will and power, and you do okay for short term. But you cannot do it. That's why the AA meeting is so effective. You know why? Because every day you go to the meeting, you say, I'm an alcoholic, I need this power from who's greater than me. They use the term greater power, right? And they keep going back day and day after day after. And after a while, their brain changes, and they don't crave alcohol as much as they did perhaps 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But one thing though, when these people stop going, they often relax. So it has to be the daily experience. Same thing in Christianity. We cannot just say, oh, you make this much progress, and say, oh, I'm pretty good compared to this guy, right? And then, I'm 99 percentile, right? It doesn't work that way. Either you're moving upward and closer to Jesus. In fact, the term that Spirit of Prophecy, the Ellen White wrote, is that you go lower and lower and lower at the foot of the cross so that you can see bigger and bigger and more of Jesus. I love that phrase. Like you get so lower and lower at the foot of the cross, you see how small you are, and your vision is full of Jesus. So, 1954, Reader's Digest. Human nervous system, brain, spinal cord, and nerves, contains what is substantially a wet cell electrical battery, generating a direct current of about 1/10 of volts, roughly 12/20 as much as a flashlight battery. So it was around 1954 that our nervous system is an electrical system, for the first time. This is a Testimony, Volume 2, page 347. The brain nerves which communicate with the entire system are the only medium through which heaven can communicate to man and affect his innermost life. Whatever disturbs the circulation of the electric currents in the nervous system lessens the strength of the vital powers and the results in deadening of the sensibility of the mind. That was written about 50 years before the science world ever found out the nervous system is the electrical system. It makes me wonder, like, why would God give this kind of information to the final, the last church that I believe on earth? Why would God give this information? This study was done by Stanford University, published in 2013. Is that trying to answer the same question that I asked myself. Like, how can I overcome my temptation and my sin? How can I overcome? I make a promise in my head then, do this, and I do okay for maybe 4 or 5 days, and I have relapsed. And same thing, they're asking, how can you help these addicted people, they have a difficulty with maybe alcohol, cocaine, whatever they maybe do well for a couple of days, and then they have a relapse. So let me show you what they did. First thing they did was that they did a brain surgery. They opened up the skull, they went into the brain, they put an intracranial implantation of a metal probe. And you can use this to shock exactly a particular area of brain called anterior cingulate cortex. See, we don't know exactly what this does. I mean, this is like a beginning phase of a kind of new area. But the scientists believe this area increases your motivation and perseverance. Okay? And I want to show you a video of the interview.
Let me know what you feel.
Okay. So, pause.
Yeah, my upper respiratory.
Pause. Okay. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to have you start, and then I'm going to raise my hand, and you can start from Scott. Thank you. So could we go to the beginning?
Okay.
And so what they did was this gentleman has the probe in his head, this area of the brain. And then the doctor has a switch. And the switch will generate a little bit of electric current to his brain. Go ahead.
Let me know what you feel.
Okay. Yeah, my upper respiratory started kind of, my chest and respiratory system started getting kind of shaky, like it was wanting to push itself out.
Breathing. Okay.
Did you guys hear that? So the doctor is shot, and he feels, I feel something in my lungs, and maybe my heart, maybe like an increased heart rate. And then he feels like he's about to, push through the door. Like he feels something he must do. Go ahead.
Okay. Did you feel any change in your emotion and mood?
Not my emotion, but in my mood, I started getting this feeling like I was driving into a storm. That's the kind of feeling I got. It was almost like you're headed towards this storm that's on the other side of maybe a couple of miles away, and you got to get across the hill. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there going, how am I going to figure out how to get over that, through that? And that's the way my brain started functioning.
So he says he feels like he's about to head toward a storm or about to cross a hill, and his mind is thinking, how am I going to go through the storm and go over the hill? Go ahead. They shot him again.
Did it happen?
And it's just about the same way as last time. And my chest never sits there and starts pounding like it's, like you're a football player getting ready to go out and try to make his first touchdown for the season or something. It's not that type of thing. It's more like this thing of,
Stop.
right?
So he's saying that it is not like as if you're about to start like a football game, like getting very emotionally excited. Go ahead.
To figure out your way out of how you're going to get through something. It's not a matter of how you're going to production wise do something. Follow what I'm saying?
Well, can you tell me a little bit more? Going through something. Tell me a little bit more about that. What do you mean going
Let's
through?
say if you knew you were driving your car and it was one of the tires was half flat, and you're only halfway there, and you have no other way to turn around and go back, you got to keep going forward. That type of a, feeling you have. You're like,
So what he's saying is that he's experiencing emotions of a kind of difficult situation, as if he's driving like a car with a flat tire, and he cannot turn around. Only way his option is move forward, and no matter what, he has to just move forward. Go ahead.
and get through this. I get through.
Was it negative or positive?
It was more of a positive type thing of push harder, and try to get through this. And that's when my heart started.
We can stop it here, and after that, there's much. So the doctor asked, was it a positive feeling, or negative feeling. He said, it's a positive feeling. And his response was, push harder, push harder, push harder. Why am I showing this video? Well, first of all, the title is The Will to Persevere, Induced by Electrical Stimulation. Do you guys remember the story of a woman who bled for 12 years? And then she reached out to Jesus and touched the hem, and then she got completely healed, right? And me too. I like this story very much, especially when I read in the book Ministry of Healing. Guess who won the book Ministry of Healing? Did you read the Ministry of Healing or the book? But yeah, there is a page 60. As he was passing, she reached forward and succeeded in barely touching the border of his garment. The moment she knew that she was healed, in that one touch was a concentrated the faith of her life, and instantly her pain and feebleness disappeared. Instantly she felt the thrill as of an electric current passing through every fiber of her being. There came over her a sensation of perfect health. She felt in her body that she was healed of that plague. Jesus' healing power was like an electric power running through our nervous system. And I think that, and by no means I'm asking you to put your finger in an electric plug. That's not what I'm telling you to do. But that's what scientific world is trying to do. When a patient is addicted and they're so depressed, they don't have a motivation, now the best of the medical school, like Stanford University, scientists are actually going into the brain, trying to shock them, trying to revive their motivation. Do you guys ever struggle with your own lack of willpower? Like you said, I want to only eat this much. And you're sitting in the buffet, and then there's a buffet trays, It's very difficult, right? The lack of willpower. Can you generate your own willpower? In the Bible and in the Stanford study, as well as many studies, you cannot generate your own willpower. And I can tell you that from my own personal experience. I've tried everything out there I did, but there's nothing I can go, It's like me trying to change the color of my hair. Willpower, right? Change the color of my hair. It's just hard. Maybe one may happen, but this is hard. So, I find the answer here. Steps of Christ, page 48. Through the right exercise of the will. What is the right exercise of the will? Is it simply saying, having the temptation in front of me and saying, I'm not going to eat you, Is that the willpower? Is that the right thing to do? Through the right exercise of will. Well, the answer is that we find in page 47. Sorry that I didn't put this slides correctly. But many are inquiring, how am I to make the surrender of myself to God? Like those alcoholics in an AA meeting. You desire to give yourself to Him, but you are weak in moral power, in slavery to doubt, and controlled by habits of your life of sin. Your promises and resolutions are like ropes of sin. You cannot control your thoughts, your impulses, your affections. The knowledge of your broken promises and forfeited pledges weakens your confidence in your own sincerity and causes you to feel that God cannot accept you. But there are two buts in these paragraphs, BUT, and I personally think those are the two most important BUTs in the entire English language. BUT. But you need not despair. What you need to understand is the true force of the will. This is the governing power in the nature of man. The power of decision or of choice. Everything depends on the right action of the will. I'm thinking, so what is the right action of the will? Is it me saying, I'm not going to eat this thing, in front of me. The power of choice God has given to man, it is there to exercise. So God has given me this power to exercise to overcome this cheesecake, perhaps. Maybe, maybe not. You cannot change your heart. You cannot of yourself give to God its affections. But, there's a second but. You can choose to serve Him. And then it struck me. All my life as a Christian, I used to think, I just have to develop willpower. If I had a strong willpower, I can be like God. Like I can be like Jesus.
But isn't it the same thing as changing your mind, making your mind up for your will to do what you want?
I'll explain that to you now. There's a two different things about willpower and having a right mind to modify the situation. I'll explain this for you. So let's say you've done everything all your life, but you still, let me ask you, is anyone here overcome all their sins? No, right? Right? By raising your hand, you're lying, so that's one. Okay? So I'm not saying that we're here all holy. But let's say you're struggling with a sin in your life, and you've done everything you can in your own will, then you're going to fail again. It didn't happen in your life. It happened in my life. But let me just go back to what page 47 says. But you can choose to serve Him. Have you chosen to serve Jesus completely in every possible way? Have you given your heart completely to Him that even if it costs the life of your existence, that you will serve Him? Have you given that up to Him? That's the question here is asking. See, I used to try to struggle with my sin. By the way, I don't come here to share a presentation so that, I want you guys to be blessed. But I come here because for me to be blessed. What I realized that when I decided to surrender my life to Jesus, I gave my will to Him, then He gives me a will to do more and more good things, that I don't have a time to do bad things and struggle with my temptation. And this is what he's talking about here. That you can choose to serve Him. They didn't use the word to death, but you can choose to serve Jesus to death. You can give Him your will. He will then work in you to will and to accept according to, let me read this. He will then work in you to will and to do according to His good pleasure. See, like you're fighting a wrong battle. I'm fighting the wrong battle. So here's a cheesecake. I'm looking at the cheesecake and saying, I just need a willpower to overcome that cheesecake, right? That's not the right use of, that's not the right exercise of the will. That is a wrong exercise of the will. The right exercise of the will is, I'm going to serve you, God. I gave you my will to you, and you give me your will to do according to your good pleasure. And no longer I'm battling the cheesecake. He takes me away from the situation. It's not even a temptation at that point, because I'm so busy doing other good things per se. I'm not sitting in front of my kitchen counter table with the cheesecake in front of me and battling that. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? See, I used to try to overcome all my temptation and all my sins by thinking about the sins, not doing this. Come on, why am I so weak? Come on, and then I made myself really busy. This ministry, that ministry, doing this, the Bible study, and doing this, and taking care of patients, giving my family Bibles, busy, doing gospel. You gotta study Bible. You gotta study spirit of prophecy. There's so many good things to do that I don't have time to deal with my own temptations. Do you know what I'm saying? So when you choose to serve Jesus, when you choose to serve God, and you want to do His will, His word, then you're no longer sitting there trying to watching TV and think, that is a temptation for me. I'm going to fight that temptation. I don't have time to watch TV. I'm not even in that situation to fight the love. Do you understand what I'm saying? That is exactly what I mean by through the right exercise of the will. So the battle is not to fight this temptation or not because you will fail. I'll fail. Battle starts whether you have knelt down in the morning and gave your will to Jesus to serve that day, give that day to Jesus. Every hour, every minute, every second, every word, whatever you have to do. And then, whether you're dealing with overeating, whether it's coffee, whatever the temptation you have, soda, Golden Corral, whatever it is. I mean, you have a Bible study to give. How can you spend 3 hours in the Golden Corral eating a buffet? You know what I'm saying? They're waiting for you to come and give you Bible study, right? It doesn't make sense? And then you will overcome your temptations. But that's exactly what we find in the studies of addiction. In order to overcome addiction, they don't say, oh, we're going to give you a lecture shock for you to sit in front of cheesecake that you can overcome the, cheesecake. You know what they say? Replace bad with good. Right? If you're having trouble with tobacco use, what they say? Gum and empty straws, right? They replace bad with good. That's the only way to overcome addiction. Instead of you going to the bar every night, you go to AA meeting. That is the way how you can overcome. It is really hard to force yourself to love God. Have you guys tried to love God? It's impossible. I tried all my life. In fact, I grew up in a very religious, strict Seventh-day Adventist Christian family. After my mom became, we weren't Adventists all my life. She became very, I truly believe the Holy Spirit touched her heart. And then my dad soon after became Adventist, and there's a period we became very extremely conservative Adventists. And from the environment that I grew up, I actually even went to Adventist college. I even worked as a youth pastor for a year. But I left that environment because I used to have a checklist of things that I should do and I shouldn't do. And the checklist was rooting my brain. You cannot overcome your addiction with a checklist. You cannot overcome your sins with a checklist. Only thing we have to do is just simply choose to serve Jesus with every ounce of me. If there's nothing else to do but serve Jesus, there's no time to do anything else. And then when you accept Jesus' love, it's so much easier to love God. It becomes a natural. He says he loves me. Okay. Believe and just accept. And let the love work in you. And then after that, I like coming here. I want to come and share what Jesus has done for me. None of you guys drag me. My wife doesn't drag me to come here. But I want to come here and share because, when I accepted Jesus' love for me, I want to come and just share what he has done for me. The electric shock that the guy received in a Stanford study? The electric shock that woman received when she touched Jesus? And I think that electric power is the love. The love which Christ diffuses through the whole being is a vitalizing power. Every vital part, the brain, the heart, the nerves, it touches with healing. By it, the highest energies of the being are aroused to activity. See, when you give God your heart and you give your mind to God and say, God, instead of me battling my addiction and sins and all that, I'm going to serve you. And you give me the will. Then he says, by it, the highest energies of the being are aroused to activity. And after that, when I surrender God, I want to do more health ministry. I want to help more people. And I want to just get busy doing this. It frees the soul from the guilt and sorrow, the anxiety and care. I don't want to sin again next time. I don't want to do this again. It goes away. That crushes the life forces. Right? You feel peaceful because you're excited about the next health presentation. You get excited about helping these people in your clinic, in my clinic. With it comes brings a serenity and composure. It implants in the soul joy that nothing earthly can destroy. Joy in the Holy Spirit, health-giving, life-giving joy. I pray this for you guys that do not fight sin, do not fight addiction on your own. You will lose, I lose. But whatever is holding you back, do not focusing on that. Just simply give your will to Jesus completely without holding anything back. And let him work in your life. And these things that bothers you no longer become temptation. Because you're focusing on Jesus. Let's pray and then I'll take questions after that. Dear Father in heaven, we're so thankful for Jesus. I pray that we never remove our thoughts and our eyes from the cross. Let the cross become the fixed point in our lives. It becomes everything that we live and breathe and eat and drink for. Please, put me and put all these lovely people here more opportunity to serve you. Give us more chance to serve you, Jesus. That we're so busy, there's nothing else we do but do work for Jesus. Please bless this church. Let there be true revival. Let this be a light, a place of light to this all people around this area. I pray all these things in the precious name of Jesus Christ, who died for us. Amen. So I'll take questions now. So, ma'am, do you have any questions now? Or? What was that? Yeah, I'm not quite sure exactly. There are studies. You can actually trigger very weak electric power even to a cell, and the cell becomes activated. So the properties, how electric. This is I think what science world like the Stanford study is trying to do, without knowing any Seventh-day Adventist health message or Bible. They're simply trying to find a way to help millions of people who are struggling psychological and addictions. In fact, I just read a recent study that says 1 in 4 children in American public schools are struggling with some kind of psychiatric disorder, whether it's a depression, overeating, etc., overeating, whatever this disorder may be. And because of this addiction, and it's becoming prevalent, they're trying to come up with a solution because of modern medicine, we have failed. I mean, let me ask you, last time when you went to a doctor who gave you a pill that you took and all your addictions went away? Right. I mean, we miserably have failed. I honestly believe the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we have this 3 angels message. We are the solution to the world's problem. Honestly, and only way for us to be able to execute this the way God wants us to do is all starting me. Every moment I have to just surrender. Give my heart to Jesus. Whatever He may be this day, just believe He will walk with me. Any other questions?
It's probably going to step on a few toes, but can you explain the effects of caffeine on your frontal lobe?
Did I show you guys the pictures of the caffeine and the mice? The spider studies?
Okay, but it's very addictive, isn't it?
Yeah, caffeine. Okay, I'll tell you this. When Jesus was on the cross, they offered Jesus vinegar and gold, which is vile, right? And then I think his desired age is 6 AD, someplace around there. And so he was hanging. They, on a long stick, a sponge, they dipped the vinegar in the vial and put it in his mouth. I think he tasted it and spitted it, and he refused. And I was wondering why Jesus did that. Because back those days, they used it as a pain medication. Jesus did that according to Desire of Ages is because he did not want to take anything will benumb his mind. And then he will lose his battle against Satan. You know, like, if he took the pain medicine, not because pain medicine is so bad, but he gets a little confused and he says, oh, I'm itching or something, and it came down, right? It would have been bad for all of us, right, if he got confused. Because he wanted to make sure his eyes are focused. In fact, that's what Desire of Ages said. Focus on the, only depend on the faith of God, so that he can complete his work. Now, when it comes to caffeine, there are many studies that says it's good, many studies that says bad. But if you look at the writings of Spirit of Prophecy from the very beginning to the end, regarding health message, 1846 was the very first one, and then the 1991 was the last time Mrs. White gave us a presentation at the General Conference. That's the last one she attended. She always used the term tea, coffee, and spirits or drinks, like alcohol stuff. You know, can I ask you a question? Is it eating meat sin? How many people think eating meat is sin? There are two statements Ellen White says. Number one, eating meat is not sin. Number one, do not make eating meat a matter of a test. Right? Eating meat is not so much that you eat the, when was the last time Ellen White ate meat? You guys know? It was somewhere between the 1870s and 1880s. Guess what, which place? Denison, Texas. And it wasn't because of, Texas and barbecue Texas is so good. She was traveling through here, and she visited church members in Denison, and they were so poor. And this time, winter, I guess back those days, we didn't have a refrigerator and stuff like that, so they were low on food. So the church members went out, they hunted an animal. It was like what they call veneer, or yeah. So it was like I guess deer, right? So they ate, and she ate, and she said it was good. I'm sure after you're hungry, traveling hungry for many days. I believe that was the last time she ate. But she does not put eating meat eating meat as in the same context of caffeine, alcohol, and like cocaine, etc. Because I wish I had the slides with me, but when the NASA in 1995, they wanted to make sure what things they put it in the food for these astronauts to go to heaven, not heaven, but like I guess they tried, but into space. They want to make sure they put something safe. It doesn't, you put one guy or two people in a spaceship worth like $1 billion, and they want to make sure they don't press one button, right? And or get sick because then there's no emergency department. So they tested all these different chemicals on spiders. So like they looked at spiders, which are healthy spiders. I call the seventh day Adventist spider. Like so, perfect spider web. And then they give marijuana. And it looks kind of choppy. You can tell he was really struggling. And the next one is methamphetamine. I mean, he was way out there. And then next one was chloral heptic or something. I forgot the name of it, but never heard of the name. But it's the agent that's olden days used to cause hypnosis. That spider, I mean, I need to shed tears for him. I mean, it was just, he was completely gone. When Spider was given caffeine, it was similar to he was given hypnotic agent. When Spider was given caffeine, coffee, the way the spider made a spider web after drinking caffeine was similar to the medicine that causes a hypnotic effect on the spider. In 1995, the NASA thought maybe the astronauts shouldn't drink coffee in this space. Well, Starbucks argues the other way, because they're the ones who sponsors a lot of these studies, right? So it's hard to just listen to the media. You know what? This is my principle. When there's a conflict between the science and Bible, who do you listen to? And I did. When there's a conflict between science and spirit of prophecy, who do you listen to? And so far, I cross my fingers, but I think it's been okay for my patients so far. I agree with you, ma'am.
So I really don't believe meat is safe.
I mean, I agree with everything you're thinking, everything you're saying. In fact, my boy, I don't think we give him a single piece of chicken or beef up to this point, and I hope he never does. And myself too. We do not have any meat products in my house because I know it's not safe, it's not healthy. But the statement exactly says it is not sin, but it is unhelpful. But I think this is what I think is a sin. Sin is actually love. It is love of self. So, when you love myself, when I love myself more than loving God, when I love myself more than loving my neighbor, anything that I do is sin. So, in that context, we can stretch this far or this much. I mean, I'm not saying, it's relative, what's wrong and right is wrong. But I agree with regarding the meat eating. If your heart is convicting you, it is unhealthy for you, and you still keep eating, I mean, you're murdering yourself, right? But according to spirit of prophecy, in that context of like comparing drinking coffee, drinking alcohol, meat is not in the same context. Because these agents that you drink instantly confuses you, makes you press wrong button, is wrong. That's what she's saying.
So meat that they say is a clean meat, that is breastfed or whatever it is, that they say it's not, does not contain hormones, is that still safe for?
I would not recommend that. I wouldn't recommend that, period.
So actually, we should forbid meat no matter what.
Yeah, not because it is sin, because it is so unhealthy. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying.
On exercise, I like to either walk or go on the treadmill. What might be an optimal range for how long should a person be on the treadmill or walk outside? You get these wonderful endorphins. Is there an optimal duration that equals an optimal, sustained endorphins? Is there time that equals more endorphins that will be sustained like for 1 or 2 days?
There's no studies that I've read about, the duration of exercise in regard to endorphin release. But the latest guideline on exercise is doing 120 minutes exercise per week, spending third of that amount in a high intensity. So they define high intensity as a 220 minus your age. So I'll just tell you, I just turned 40 last month. And I guess half year, or with middle of the road. And so it's a 220 minus 40 will be 180. So I want to sustain my 20 minutes of my exercise if I was going to exercise for 60 minutes in that heart rate by running. And after that 40 minutes, I should do some kind of weightlifting type of exercise. But also, if you're a mental worker, meaning you do a lot of studying, etc., I recommend that you do one-to-one, meaning as many hours you spend sitting in your computer, that you should exercise. I honestly think it's really hard in Texas. I don't know, any of you guys do this. Do you guys do gardening? Any of you guys do gardening? Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great exercise, being out in nature and then grow your own food, save money, and you know where your food is coming from. At the same time, you exercise. That's something that my wife and I like to do, but I first have to learn how to mow my lawn. I'm just not really good. But my goal is to, do my own garden work down the road.
I was wondering if you can tell us something about connection between the consumption of sugar and depression.
I'm pretty sure there is. All I can tell you about the sugar consumption is that, number one, let me just get a little bit of water here. I read that sugar is about 8 times more addictive to your brain than cocaine is. And then number two, we used to eat, there's a video on TED Talk, like TED lectures. In 1800, an American person eat this much sugar in the picture, video. And then now, it's a 25-pound bag, right? Like this big. And then the person was pouring, I think, 3 or 4 times. That's how much sugar that we average. I think there has to be an association because of the prevalence of depression. People become so depressed nowadays. Yeah.
Oh, I was told this lady's been waiting a
Yeah.
year to ask the question.
Right.
You know, when this opportunity to talk about the market and cheese. They have the best cheese and they have the casein in it.
No, no. Casein is the only. Casein. I have to look it up. I mean, I've seen that. I was talking about morphine, which means like morphine from cows. Casein. I don't know where I read casein, but I.
When you make buttermilk and you churn it and then water that separates, that's casein.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. You know how the best way to make vegan cheese? Cashew. Yeah, I wouldn't use a casein because the casein protein. That's right. The casein protein is what they use for the bodybuilders. I wouldn't recommend that. But
Testimony. I started smoking when I was, I think, 17. And when I reached 18, my father knew about it. He said, you can smoke, but don't ask money from me, because I will not give you money to smoke. And from there, 18, 17, until that was 17 years old. I don't know. I was born 1957. So, from I was 17 until when I came to the United States in 2002, 1 year. In 1 year, I quit smoking. I was talking about that because of the willpower of the brain, he said. They said, you can do it by yourself. I said, yes, you can. If you have the willpower, you can when you put your mind to it.
praise God. And I think this is.
And from there, 2003 up to now, I never had a smoke.
But I think that some people they have some things in life are not as addictive to your brain than others. What I mean is like some people who's been using nicotine product for many years and they can turn it off all overnight. Yeah, but not everybody has that. I mean, for you, man, like for example, let's say you may have other things that you're struggling today that that you want to quit, but perhaps you cannot overcome. Some other people could overcome. So what I'm saying is overall, we all have our own struggles, and then the worst of addiction is, I think, loving ourselves and loving God and loving our neighbors. That is the hardest thing to overcome. And I honestly I don't know any human being who was able to do that unless they believe in Jesus.
Hi, Dr. Lee. I was wondering if you could speak to the fact that I have really high sugar cravings at certain points. And my fiance says, you need fruit. And so the last time I ate fruit, which I had watermelon, cantaloupe, and pineapple, I felt okay. But the sugar craving to desire something else, something like real sugar, candy or something to.
Do you know how you can change your taste? Fasting. If you fast, your taste buds completely change. I actually fasted last Saturday I came here. That morning was last meal until Wednesday. So I did 5 days. Just drinking water for 5 days. I've never done that before. But when you're speaking in front of 130 pastors, you feel just a little bit of pressure, And And so I was in such a pressure. I wanted to make sure when I share my message with all these pastors, I do not make any mistakes, any wrong answer. So last time I fasted long was like 2.5 days, but somehow I was able to do it for 5 days. And I wasn't going to work. I was just Monday through Wednesday, I took my days off, and I just sat, prepared messages, reviewed, prayed, and drank water. But you know, the Thursday morning, I woke up very early Thursday morning, and then my wife prepared me my typical breakfast haystack. And I have to tell you, that haystack was the best haystack I ever had in my life. I mean, I had tears in my eyes. I mean, but what I'm saying is, if you want to change your taste, I ask you to fast for as long as you can. You know what? There's a statement by Ellen White, and I cannot remember the page, but if you have a difficulty, she says, any plain diet, just fast until you are able to take it.
I get what you're saying about fasting, and I appreciate that, but the body does need some sugar, right? My thing is
Yeah.
I run low, and then by the time I realize I need sugar, I eat the fruit. So, I mean, how much fruit should we be incorporating in our diet?
I think that's not the right question. The right question is, it's not the problem of you craving sugar, it's why your sugar dropped in first place. You're not getting enough nutrition, you're not getting enough nuts that will sustain your energy. You need to get a fistful of nuts, and you need to eat them maybe once or twice a day. Because nuts will release your sugar slowly. So like in the morning, I always eat a fistful of nuts, mixed nuts, and if I skip that, instead of eating like my breakfast and second meal, I end up eating my second meal early, and then I end up craving for food at nighttime, or because I'm hungry. So you want to be able to eat something that will mixture, nuts, beans, etc. That will sustain the energy, so your sugar doesn't drop. The more processed food you eat, the more sugar drops, because the sugar goes up high and drops low. Slowly releasing food such as nuts, beans, etc. will sustain your energy, so you don't crave sugar.
Thank you.
On that, when you have sunflower, cashew, pecan, or almonds, then you put it in a blender, on a coffee grinder, and you make it with cereal, or you have that.
I mean, I'll leave it up to your preference.
So
Ma'am.
it's not important to how you consume.
Yeah, I mean, let's say you have a difficulty chewing TMJ or something. Yeah, I think it would be easier. I like to chew them actually myself, and I like the sensation of crunching. But it's your preference.
Without salt and oil, in other words.
Yeah, it's plain as but.
dry nuts.
I have to confess. I mean, I do have a little bit of salted nuts, but I don't use it as it is. I just put a couple of those mixture with the unsalted nuts. So I just to kind of flavor them.
I had a good question in regards to, since we're supposed to eat more alkaline type of foods, and given that the only bottled water out there that's alkaline is Fiji water, and the rest of this is acidic, so how, if we were to either buy alkaline water or,
Can I answer that question? It's not a correct question. The reason is this. There's no such thing as alkaline water. I used to, my sister, she graduated from Loma Linda Pharmacy School. Currently, she's a pharmacist for UCLA oncology program. When she was in Palm Springs doing one of the rotations, there was a pharmacy where they sell called ionized water. And so all these older patients who have cancer and all that, they'll come and get a jar of water. It was over $10. And then the pharmacist will turn the tap and put the water in and put it in this thing, and the people will come and say it's ionized water and they'll take it. Alkaline water, if you ask the chemist, they wouldn't know what that means.
Yeah, but if you make it, like I found a recipe where I can actually make my own. So
Yeah, I'm not
pH
sure.
level, the pH level is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's more than, I guess, eight. So it's more alkaline, so it's better for the body.
There are no studies I read, and I mean, I have a lot of, these are the questions I get from Seventh-day Adventist patients. They come with these things they read. And I have to tell you, when someone comes to your church to sell you something, do not listen to them. These machines that make water pH shift, and these things that, the supplements that make you grow longer hairs, maybe on chest. I mean, I was tempted. I always wanted some muscular chest hair, but still, I didn't buy them. I mean, I'm just telling you, like, all these people coming to Adventists, because, Seventh-day Adventists are very kind and loving people, and they're very accepting, especially when you see another Seventh-day Adventist, and their wolves out there want to take advantage of you. You can drink any tap water and still be fine. I mean, I use a filter, it's like Brita filter. Yeah, but I don't think I'm, being damaged by not drinking alkalized or more acidic water and all that. There's no evidence that really, and another thing is Seventh-day Adventists, they buy a lot of vitamins. I mean, to a point it is dangerous. Many of my patients came, I started working with a guy named Pastor Mark Fox. I don't know, have you guys heard of him? He's an evangelist and very powerful speaker. And then I've done several evangelism. I'm like the opening gig for him. I get up and do my 10-minute thing, and he'll come and preach. And since I've done that, like all these people from Keens and Crowley, Fort Worth, and they're all coming to see me, thinking that I'm going to give them some magic bullet. I mean, they ask all kinds of questions that I've never heard of before. And I look at Science Journal, there's no evidence, but there's someone out there going around church after church selling these stuff. And my recommendation is just drink filter water. Don't even buy bottled water. It doesn't add anything to your body. It doesn't do, water is water. I'm sure you can shift the pH for transient, but I'm not sure, because your body is a kidney, which makes your pH to stay around 7.4. So the more you drink acidic or the more you drink basic, your body shifts the pH to correct it again.
But what about the foods? Because we're supposed to eat more alkaline foods, like the vegetables and the fruits. Those are more alkaline.
Where do you find that in the writings of Ellen White?
In terms of last week we attended even a health seminar. It was presented by this Dr. Wright, and he's an MD, and he was
Yeah, I've heard of him, yeah.
kind of presenting there's evidence as well in terms of from medical journals to support we're supposed so I'm just kind of sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to be crude on this one. I think that when someone, even for me, if I come speak to you, it's not considering the Bible and spirit of prophecy, you must keep me out. I don't find any of that to be true. I agree with eating vegetables. I agree with drinking water. But I'm not so sure about certain vegetables make your body acidic, or it's just not accurate information. Because your body, your kidney is a filter. It's like the kidney is a device where it keeps your pH at 7.4. Otherwise, your body's going to have a very difficult time. Even shifting slightly 1 or 2 degrees left or right. And so it's a buffer. The kidney is a buffering device. And so no matter what you eat, no matter how, imagine have you heard of anyone who can kill themselves eating lemons to kill themselves? I've never heard anything studied, right? Would you consider that lemon can shift the pH in your water? I'm sure. But I'm sure that I've never heard a case where someone ate 20 lemons straight and they killed themselves. Because the reason is their kidney has a capacity to buffer that, the lemon. So, yeah.
Okay, I used to breathe and then I boil it and drink it because I had Stanford in 98. So my
didn't get the
Who did that?
doing more filtration.
No, I filter it with Brita,
Uh-huh.
and then boil it, and then that's what I drink, water. And I drink, like right now, we're about 100 pounds, so I drink half of that would be 50 ounces of water daily.
Well, I'm not quite sure that there's evidence for drinking of boiled water. I mean, there's devices what it boils the water and it cools it down, so there's no supposedly chemicals because what you do is you only vaporize water, H2O.
Well, I was thinking of the bacteria. That's why we boil it.
Yeah,
That's all.
Distillers do that.
yeah, distillers to do that, but I'm not sure it's really necessary. I mean, I think most important thing is that eat healthy, exercise, drink a lot of water, and because what is the number one killer in life? It's stress. Yeah, do not stress about drinking this acidic water or basic water or boiling water or not drinking too much vitamin. I think trusting God and just eating healthy life, doing healthy lifestyle is probably the best thing. I'm going to take questions privately because I think we're done with the program. But thank you so much for giving me this chance to come and speak here. And I pray that God will bless you in your health and your journey with God. Thank you.
Before we have our final book drawing and we have our health and snack out in the lobby, we do have a short song we would like to share with you. And one of the things that Dr. Lee talked about was the importance of surrendering yourself to Jesus as part of your health, how that is actually beneficial to your health, and how as your frontal lobe is surrendered to God, you will be able to make better decisions. You'll be able to overcome temptations, overcome addictions. And so this song is a prayer to God of surrendering our lives and everything we have to Him.
Take my life and let it be consecrated.
dismiss and have our final meeting in the hall with our healthy snacks and food, I do want to have that book drawing that I mentioned earlier. We have 2 Ministry of Healings to give away. And for those of you who do not win a book, we do have this magazine that's called Radiant Living. And this is an excellent magazine. It has excerpts from the Ministry of Healing. It's kind of a condensed version of that book. So let's see who we have on our list. How about Carolina Granada? Come on up.